Hey, I'm Blair Best. It's Thursday here on The Story, and tonight an update on a North Portland father who was detained by ICE last week. We talked with his daughter, who says he's now being deported. Plus, we head to Tigard, where City Council is trying to figure out who should be their next mayor after theirs suddenly stepped down. But first, Portland Mayor Keith Wilson is considering resuming enforcement of the city's camping ban. A senior member of the city's shelter team joins me live in just a few minutes. It's our big story tonight. Okay, so this week, Mayor Keith Wilson announced that starting November 1st, the city might begin enforcing its camping ban again. The mayor says the city can do this because it now has consistent available shelter capacity. The city started enforcing the camping ban last July. People camping on public property who repeatedly refused the offer of available shelter faced citations, a fine of up to $100, and potentially up to a week in jail. Now, Oregon law allows cities to enforce camping bans like this only if it is, quote, objectively reasonable and there is available shelter. Last year, when enforcement began, city outreach workers were sent to problematic campsites first. A city spokesperson tells me since July 2024, there have been 9 arrests. But back in February, the mayor quietly stopped enforcing the ban as he tried to open more shelters and day centers. In a statement this week, Mayor Wilson said in part, "We cannot arrest our way out of homelessness, nor should we. We must, however, return to enforcing our existing codes on open drug use, illegal dumping, blocked right-of-way, fire, and other sanitation and quality of life issues. Individuals who engage in unlawful behavior will be subject to citation. These citations will involve warrant checks."
I think it's very welcome, and it's also long overdue. I think that he needs to act more boldly and more decisively. More boldly.
That's Linda Witt, the head of the Shelter Livability Committee in the Pearl District Association.
And I applaud him for moving in this direction. We all wish it had happened sooner because we've seen the problem kind of accelerate over the past few months, and especially since the shelter's been installed.
Now, she's talking about the Northrop Street shelter. It opened earlier this month in the Pearl. It was met with major neighborhood pushback, people arguing that it's unsafe to put a low barrier shelter in a residential area and that it will attract more street camping. So far, Linda, who tracks neighborhood concerns, says the area surrounding the shelter is not looking great.
It's an amazing number of people that are trespassing on our properties, sleeping out in public, being in various forms of undress. These are all tragic human situations, but they're taking their toll on the people in this neighborhood and on the businesses. On 3 hours on Sunday, I documented about 20 such cases, just walking around a 5-block area of the Pearl. I think that my inbox now has about 308 email messages concerning issues of this type.
Mayor Wilson added that this week, by December 1st, we will ensure that every Portlander who wants a bed will have one. To deliver on this promise, we are expanding overnight shelter beds, developing day centers and secure storage facilities, and deploying outreach workers trained to connect people to vital treatment resources and reunification services. This week, the city also announced it's spending more than $1 million to expand a Northeast Portland homeless day center. Now, today I also caught up with those at the Union Gospel Mission. Here's what they had to say about the potential return of enforcement of the camping ban.
We are hopeful that this can be good for those who are experiencing homelessness, that hopefully they can get holistic care, not just get kicked off the street.
That's Courtney Dodds. She tells me she's not sold that penalizing someone is the way to address this crisis.
I'm not sure that it always is very effective. I think the idea of having some incentive to get care, to get recovery, to get housing is good. I'm not sure about the citation part, honestly.
Now, we reached out to Portland Police to ask about their role in all of this, and they referred us back to the mayor's office. However, we do know the camping ban requires police to coordinate with the city's Street Services Coordination Center before citing or arresting anyone. So basically, the city outreach workers have the say of whether police will show up to a camp or not.
It's a tough balance. There is a place for public safety, for not having open air drug use, for having clean sidewalks for everyone who's living there. It seems like there is a place for some enforcement there, but also for the people in those situations, what they really need is medical care, health care, recovery, mental health, especially the mental health. It really seems like we need support for mental health care. And so I think what we would like to see is that those people get into a situation where they're getting wraparound services and holistic recovery. And I'm not sure that a citation or in jail is the place where that's going to happen.
Okay, so joining me now live in studio is Rob Lane, a senior communications strategist for the city's shelter services team. Mr. Lane, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let's start with these overnight shelter beds the mayor is opening. We know his goal is 1,500 by December 1st. So talk to us. What's the latest on that? How many beds are left to open?
Right. We just opened the Northwest Northrop shelter along with two other shelters in St. Stephen's, which is in downtown, as well as the Central Church of Nazarene. All told, there's about 630 beds that we have developed over the last year since January 2nd. Right now, we're about halfway to our goal, and as of December 1st, we're still aiming for 1,500 beds. What has always been part of this plan is that as we move towards wintertime, we know that utilization rates are kind of low during the summer due to temperature, weather's nice, so folks don't feel like they have to go to shelter. But as we get to winter, there's no place for people to go. When we hit December 1st, we should have enough beds in place and available for every Portlander that would like to sleep in a safe place at night.
So do you think we're going to meet that 1,500 number by December 1st? Where's the next shelter going to open?
I'm sure of it. Well, we're looking at a bunch of different sites that are on our radar, and we're finalizing contracts with a couple of places that we're going to announce pretty soon.
Okay, you can't tell me here.
Not right now.
Okay. We've heard time and time again from the mayor. He's promised to end unsheltered homelessness by December. Mm-hmm. What's the reality of that, and has that goal changed?
Yeah, I think unsheltered homelessness means a lot of things to a lot of different people. In this particular case, I think that we're trying to unlock the system that exists, right? It's a little stuck. We can get people into alternative shelter, but we're having difficulty moving them into the next stage of rental assistance or rapid rehousing or other types of, other housing journey. In ending unsheltered homelessness, it's really about being able to provide a safe place to sleep for anyone that wants one. And up until Mayor Wilson, we didn't really have that available. So with the introduction of the new overnight emergency shelter beds, now we have an opportunity to bring those online, which has allowed for other types of policy operations to kind of pull into place, such as the public camping laws, et cetera.
I'm just curious, talk me through the numbers though, because 1,500 shelter beds, there's more than 1,500 homeless people on our streets.
Sure. And what Mayor Wilson has said quite repeatedly is that once you're able to unlock the system, that we can continually move people through to the next stage. A good example of that is that the City Shelter Services team just created and implemented as of September 1st a stay lengths limit policy, which means that folks that are in our alternative shelter sites have 120 days before they need to either move on to the next stage or they'll be exited to someplace else. What that means is that we had been expanding the number of days that people were staying in our alternative shelter sites for longer and longer periods of time. And that's just untenable to continually move people through the system to the next step of their housing journey. Okay,
so neighbors surrounding many of these shelters, as you know, have major safety concerns. Many claim they can't reach anyone with the city, or the city is slow to respond to their concerns. What do you have to say to those neighbors who are watching tonight?
I'm a little surprised by that, because when folks reach out to our shelter services community engagement team, we have probably one of the best community engagement teams in the city, and I truly mean that. They're incredibly responsive. They go through over 200 emails a week. They're in over 100 hours of community meetings a month, and they move through this in a personalized way. They know the neighbors around each of our shelter sites by their first name, and those neighbors know our community engagement team by their first name. So I'm a little surprised to hear that they're unable to reach anyone, and I'm happy to talk further with those participants or neighbors to learn more about what they're not getting.
So we actually have a question from one of those neighbors. It's a woman who lives right across the street from the Moore Street shelter in North Portland, which is run by the Salvation Army. So she had this question for you. She asks, when new shelters were placed in residential areas, residents were assured of increased neighborhood livability. However, the city has failed to ensure the promised 24/7 security and enforcement to address public disturbances such as loitering, open drug use, and public sleeping in the vicinity. With the Salvation Army stating it has no plans for additional security, what specific actions will you take to address the safety concerns of residents living near these facilities?
Certainly. Mayor Wilson has made very clear that public safety and public livability is incredibly important, that they need to go hand in hand with our alternative as well as our outdoor shelters and for our overnight shelters. In this particular case, I think that one of the things that I would highlight is that Portland the Portland Police Bureau released a report earlier this summer that the Oregonian did an independent subsequent report that showed that crime was actually decreasing around our overnight shelters. So I'm a little surprised that this person has indicated that livability is going down when what we've seen is statistically that's just not true, that crime has been decreasing around our overnight sites. What we are committed to is increasing police presence in the area, and that was something that Mayor Wilson had made very clear. And we've seen that in both District 1 and District 2 as part of the policing initiatives that we've seen the commanders in each of those districts provide additional police presence in the morning and at night as participants into overnight shelters are moving into shelter and moving out of shelter.
And I've seen that study as well, and I've heard from many neighbors, including those around the Moore Street shelter, who are pushing back on that and saying that study doesn't make sense to them because in their eyes, they're experiencing an increase in crime. So will the city increase police patrols, say, around the Moore Street shelter?
I can't speak to how the police are going to respond specifically, but they have been increasing their presence, especially over the last couple of weeks due to an incident that occurred last week that you reported on. And that's something that has been incredibly important to both the mayor and to the city at large, that really increasing public safety and even just the perception of public safety is important.
And just for people at home, if they didn't catch it last week, someone who was exiting the Moore Street shelter smashed 4 car windows of people living around that shelter. Okay, the Moore Street shelter, let's just stick on this one for a moment. Yeah. It's also across the street from a day center, or a daycare rather, and within 1,000 feet of a school. What do you have to say to neighbors who see that as conflicting with community safety priorities?
Well, during the day, we now are offering increased opportunities for participants to go to other places. So while the schools are open in the morning, we have outreach workers that kind of deploy to our overnight shelters, and they help move people along. And they ask at the beginning of the day, what's your plan for today? Like, what's your next step? What do you need to do? And help them to move and disperse them to other areas of support and services. So for example, we've just entered into 2 new partnerships as part of the city for daytime shelter or daytime services. One is Join, which we announced earlier this week, increased partnership there to essentially double the effective time and operations and hours of their daytime shelter and services. But we also got creative, and we've opened the Northwest Gleason Oasis in downtown, which is an outdoor, first of its kind for Portland day center. It's a safe place for people to go to connect to services and support, to utilize bathrooms, hygiene stations, a kitchenette, Wi-Fi, etc. So while I understand that there is some concern for schools and for daycare, we've mostly dispersed people by the time that they open, and they're not coming in before they close.
But how will someone get from the North Portland shelter to Old Town and then to Northeast? I believe Join is on like 81st or 82nd.
Sure, there's actually a bus line from Moore to, a direct bus line from Moore to the Join shelter. And so if they're trying to go downtown, it's a little bit more of a kind of a roundabout way, but we also provide transportation tickets to get to, and vouchers to get from one place to another. We've developed a contract with taxis in the area to make sure that people can get support.
Okay, what about private security? I know you said you can't speak to Portland police and they're patrolling routes. Does the city pay for private security around these shelters?
At this point, we don't, but I know that it's an ongoing conversation in other circles.
Okay, we also understand the city homeless shelter program is facing an $11 million shortfall. They were expecting that money from the state legislature. That didn't happen. So what happened there, and how do you see that impacting the mayor's shelter plan?
Sure. We were anticipating about $10.9 million from the state in resources, in some resources, but also $26.6 million in biannual resources. This 10.9 million, we knew pretty quickly after the city had passed their budget that we weren't going to get the money. The state had made very clear that they were going to have to make cuts across different budgets, and that city support for across the state of Oregon was probably going to be hit. So as you probably know and have reported on, the transportation budget for ODOT is one of those issues where they were really facing a pretty sizable budget gap. So we knew pretty quickly that that wasn't going to be the case after our budget had already been passed. So we've anticipated that. We began this year knowing that that money was not going to be there. And we also knew what our mission was, which is the mayor had a very specific vision that city council approved unanimously that we needed to stand up beds, day centers, and day storage. So we've been working within our means to make sure that happened. We had to get creative. Here's a good example of that. So this year, we pulled back contracts that were held with Multnomah County, and we renegotiated those contracts, creating a little over $2.1 million in savings. We've also, instead of hiring additional staff to oversee the overnight shelter, we've been utilizing staff from our alternative shelter program to oversee both. And so creating cost savings with labor. And then finally, we've also been looking creatively at the ways that we implement Mayor Wilson's plan. So as I mentioned, the outdoor day center at Northwest Gleason, that's something that is first of its kind, but it's also a pretty cost-effective measure. It's a big site with transferable options and allows us to be cost-effective while actually servicing more people than we would have at a brick-and-mortar building.
Okay, Mr. Lane, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, now it's your turn to weigh in. What do you think about the city enforcing the camping ban come November? Did anything that Mr. Lane say tonight stand out to you? Let us know. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Well, still ahead on the story, the mayor of Tigard resigned. Now, someone else needs to do the job. Why the city council says they want to pick one of their own when the story returns. One of the two fathers arrested by federal officials in North Portland last week is set to be deported today. Family members say Rafael Arreola Caballero was set to be deported this morning, likely to Mexico, a place they don't believe is safe. Catherine Cook reports.
There's only so much that can be done.
Lisbeth Arreola Ramirez is losing hope. It's been 1 week since ICE agents arrested her father, Rafael Arreola Caballero, on his way to work in North Portland, breaking his car window. On Wednesday, Ramirez says her dad called them from the ICE facility in Tacoma to say he would be deported Thursday morning.
All of us are scared because we don't know where he's going, so we don't know where to call. We don't know how to reach him.
Ramirez says her father moved here from Mexico 20 years ago and is undocumented. She believes traffic crashes are the only thing on his record. And while her father has an attorney, Ramirez says immigration officials won't let him speak to them.
We'll be getting justice regardless if he does get deported or not. Because how they took him is not the way that they should have taken him.
I checked with the family this afternoon, and they say they haven't heard either way if the deportation has happened. Ramirez says she's also worried about her father's health. He had surgery on his elbow just a few weeks ago and still had stitches. She says agents re-injured it when they arrested him. We reached out to ICE to learn more and are still waiting to hear back. Well, 2 weeks ago, the mayor of Tigard abruptly resigned from office. Now, the city council has to decide who will take her place. Former Mayor Heidi Lube says ongoing conflict with other city councilors and city staff was behind her decision to step down, and she left office immediately. Now, at a meeting earlier this week, the city council decided they would appoint one of them to be the new mayor. They had a few options: either appoint someone from the public, hold a special election, which there isn't enough time for, or appoint a sitting city councilor, which they ultimately decided on. City Councilor Jake Schlack said he wanted someone who already understands the job.
We are currently part of a 2-year council cycle. We set council goals and have issued policy direction, and I would like to see an internal appointment because I want the mayor to be someone who is part of those discussions, who understands our collective vision for this period of Tigard City Council history, and I think that would be appropriate. Plus, we will, if we do that, have to backfill an open city council position for the remainder of whomever's term is vacated by an internal appointment. So there is still appointment to get fresh perspectives on the council and as part of council discussions going into the next election.
Now, all of the other city councilors agreed they wanted an internal appointment, except for Tigard's youth councilor.
I think that it's important that we maintain trust with the city, and I think that if we do not at least have some sort of public involvement, then there's going to be a lot of backlash and people are going to be really upset. And I think it's really important that we also, while understanding that it's important to value the council's goals and council's values, that we also need to make sure that we are thinking about what the people of the city care about and what they want.
Other councilors said that having a special election for a new councilor after one of them is appointed mayor would give the public enough involvement. They're also asking for the public to submit questions to the two city councilors who say they want the job. Councilors Jeanette Shaw and Yikang Hu are the ones who want the job. Hu is a food and drug lawyer and former research scientist. Shaw works on transportation and STEM issues. They'll get to make their case at the next city council meeting on October 7th. The council will ask the two candidates questions, and after that, they'll vote for who they would like to be mayor. If you live in Tigard, you can also submit questions to the city to potentially be asked at the meeting. Information on how to do that is on the City of Tigard website. They'll give the candidates 5 questions in advance, and 5 will be a surprise. Stick with us. We're back right after this. Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. If you ever miss an episode of The Story at 6:30, we re-air it at 8:30 and 10:30 on our TV app, KGW+. It'll also be there the next morning at 11:30, and you can download that free KGW+ app right now. It's on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. In the meantime, have a great Thursday night. Tomorrow is Friday, and I'm off, but we've got some great content coming your way still. Hope you join us.